Hey guys, welcome back to another Division video. Now today we're going to be taking a look at another viewer build, this time coming from xtuffman. Now this is a comment from a build that I posted 3 months ago. I will post it here, Ongoing Carnage. Now xtuffman's version of the build focuses more on the Vile damage, which is really nice because mine was like somewhere in between of like making enemies bleed and having critical hit chance and critical hit damage using a bunch of perfect or named items. This one, it's more of more options. He didn't really mention any specific weapon to use, although you know what, Scorpio I think is a pretty good choice for this. But for the main weapon, he didn't really mention anything. He mentioned that you just use Sadist. Now I have here a weapon that has Sadist, but majority of the damage for this build comes from Vile, also Ongoing Carnage, which is really nice because we deal a lot of damage. Mainly because we are using the glass cannon passive here in the chest piece. This will amplify our damage by 25%. All damage you take is amplified by 50%. So that's the drawback for this one, but this does boost our damage. Also the tick from Vile, it does affect the damage tick from Vile. So having glass cannon as your main talent for the chest piece does work. It's really strong. And what you want to do for this build is stack status effects. All these yellow stats here, you can see here, are status effects. Now I have one piece of gear here that doesn't really have the ideal stats, and that would be the chest piece here. According to the comment, which I will post here, you want to have an armor core, that is what he suggested, and have status effects, and probably put something here like a critical hit damage or critical hit chance. So that is it for the chest piece. For the backpack, we are using Ongoing Directive, and that has the talent Trauma Specialist. Increases the duration of your bleed status effects by 50% and all bleed damage done by 100%. One thing that I forgot to mention before we go to the shooting range and have a quick demonstration would be using the Demolitionist Specialization for this build, because that specialization provides 10% more damage on explosive damage, and that explosive damage gonna be affecting our damage tick on Vile. Also, China Light is giving us a 15% explosive damage, so that is really nice. Okay, so here we are at the shooting range. I will apply some status effects on this enemy using our Scorpio, and I will kill it or finish it off with our main weapon, which is the LMG. And as you can see here, I will zoom in. There is that number 230. Those bullets are bleed bullets, and all of your teammates actually get a portion of that. I think it was 50%. Okay, so after acquiring the hollow point ammo, which is the bleed bullets, we will just shoot enemies and apply bleed to every single one of them. And now, as you can see, I will pause the video and you can see the damage of Vile and the damage of bleed. Now red means that is the bleed damage, and the white one is the Vile damage. So that is the playstyle for the build. We use Scorpio at the beginning while enemies are marked with Ongoing Directive. We swap to our LMG, finish them off with our LMG, and pretty much moving forward, you know, your teammates are gonna be inflicting bleed as well, and everyone will be bleeding and will be taking damage from Vile. And try to stay in cover and not take too much damage because we have glass cannon for our chest piece talent, so we are not that tough. Okay, so now that the intro is out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at the items for the build, starting off with the weapons. We have our main weapon here. He didn't really mention anything specific. He just mentioned that use Sadist for the talent, because Sadist lets you deal 20% more weapon damage to bleeding enemies, and we're gonna be making enemies bleed, so this is very important. But I have here as an LMG weapon, I'm trying to rank it up. This is the GR9. Now the reason why I use or chose this weapon because of its large magazine size. Without the attachment, this weapon has 200 mags, and 50% of that ammo would be given to your teammates, which is the hollow point ammo, the ammo that will make enemies bleed. And right now, the stats that I have here is LMG damage, damage out of cover, and health damage. Now you can change this last one to something else. Unfortunately, I don't really have the option of doing that because I already re-rolled the talent here, so I don't really have anything better here. I have health damage, but you know, maybe critical hit chance and critical hit damage would be a nice choice. Now for the mods for this gun, I have built-in scope, which I can't really change. This one is what I'm talking about earlier, plus 35 rounds. Now, if you are using the gunner specialization, that will upgrade this attachment into plus 50 rounds. Unfortunately, I think it's really worth it of you know, choosing the demolitionist instead of gunner for that bonus vile damage, or explosive damage. So we just have to settle for this one, which is plus 35 rounds. And you know, you have this attachment here. This is the demolitionist specialization attachment. It gives us additional 2%. This one gives 7% critical hit chance compared to the normal one, which is 5%. So that's kind of nice. And then lastly, I have here plus 5 critical hit chance as the last attachment. Now for the secondary weapon, we are using Scorpio. This is an exotic shotgun. You could farm this on countdown. Just set your target loot into shotgun and hopefully you get it. It has the stats of shotgun damage, damage to armor, and critical hit damage. The talent Septic Shock, which lets you inflict status effects. Now, remember earlier I said that you just use this weapon at the beginning of the fight. Just apply some status effects by shooting enemies and immediately swap into your main weapon, which is the LMG. Finish the enemies off, and after that you will get the hollow point ammo. And moving forward, you don't really want to go back and use Scorpio. You could just finish the entire mission by just using the LMG and those hollow point ammo. For the sidearm, it's not really important. Feel free to use whatever you want. Now that we are done with the weapons, let's take a quick look at the items or armor pieces. Starting off with the mask. We are using the Vile mask. This is an exotic mask that you could farm on countdown. Just set your target loot into mask and hopefully you get it. It has the core attribute of skill tier, attributes of status effect, hazard protection, and I put a critical hit chance mod here. Now if you don't mind having lower critical hit chance, you could change this into something else. It's up to you, maybe critical hit damage. And it has the talent Toxic Delivery. Status effects also apply a damage over time debuff for 10 seconds. This is not going to be affected by your status effect stats, so it's fixed as 10 seconds. The total damage dealt is equal to your 50% of your concussion grenade. Damage increased by your status effect attributes. So there you go. Okay, so for the chest piece, we are using the China Light Industries. Now, the brand set bonus for this item is 15% explosive damage. The core attribute for this piece of gear is +1 skill tier. And according to the comment, you don't really want skill tier for this piece. You want to reroll this into armor, right? And the attributes that you want would be status effects. And he didn't really mention anything, but I'm guessing it would be critical hit chance or critical hit damage. It's up to you. It's not really that important. But what's the most important thing here is the explosive damage and status effects. And the talent, which is Glass Cannon. All damage you deal is amplified by 25%. All damage you take is amplified by 50%. So just try to stay in cover and not take too much damage. For the holster, we are using the Ongoing Directive gear set. The 2-piece bonus gives you 15% status effects. The 3-piece gives you 30% reload speed, which is really good in LMGs. 4-piece will give you the talent Rules of Engagement. Shooting at a status affected enemy will apply a mark, and that is what the Scorpio gun is for, to apply status effects. Once they're marked, killing an enemy that is marked grants a full clip of hollow point ammo for your active weapon, and half of the clips agent's active weapon to the rest of the party. So if you are using the LMG, which has like 200 ammo, 50% of that will just be distributed to your teammates. And the mark does last for 10 seconds, and hollow point ammo amplifies weapon damage by 20% and applies bleed on hit. Right? And the stats that you want for this holster would be weapon damage and status effects. For the backpack, I'm using the Ongoing Directive still, and the core attribute for this piece of gear is weapon damage. Just worry about getting status effects on your sub-attribute, and I put a critical hit chance mod here. It could be critical hit damage. The talent is Trauma Specialist. Increases the duration of your bleed status effects by 50% and all bleed damage done by 100%. It does require Rules of Engagement. Now for the gloves, we are using the Ongoing Directive still. The core attribute for the gloves would be weapon damage, and then just put status effects as your secondary attribute. Lastly, for the knee pads, still Ongoing Directive, and the stats that you want, pretty basic, still weapon damage and status effects. Now for the skills, he didn't really mention anything specific to use for the skills, but you know, you could use a Reviver or you could use Decoy for something that is pretty much safe. But since we have a bunch of status effects on our gear, why not, you know, this is an option as well. This is the Explosive Seeker Mine that applies bleed on target. That's an option as well, but keep in mind that we don't really have a bunch of skill tier. This is supposed to be skill tier 1. The chest piece is supposed to be armor core, so skill tier 1 with Seeker Mine, you know, that might work. Now for the specialization, we are using Demolitionist. Mainly just a couple of things here. I think this is like the most important thing, which is Explosive Ordnance, tier 3. 10% increased explosive damage, affects explosive grenades, skills, and effects. So this does boost our Vile damage, and this build pretty much relies on Vile and Bleed to inflict damage. So, okay, so before we go to the shooting range, let's take a quick look at the stats. All of my pieces of gear here are ranked 0, none of them are leveled up, right? And I have here 726 armor, pretty much nothing. But he suggested to change the China Light into armor roll, blue, so that should be a little bit higher. And the stats are not really that impressive because most of the damage comes from the Vile and Ongoing Directive bleed. But we have here 44% critical hit chance and 45 critical hit damage. Okay, so here we are with the shooting range, and let me show you again how the build works. We want to start off with Scorpio because this one has the talent Septic Shock, and you know, when we shoot enemy, they get poison, disorient, and shock. And once enemies have any sort of status effects, they will have a mark. And once you kill the enemy with a weapon with that mark, you get the hollow point bullet. All right, so let me just apply some status effects here, and let me switch to my LMG and kill this enemy here, right? And after we kill that, I will zoom in. You get that bullet. All of the bullets here will cause bleed, and the bleed damage is pretty high. And that's pretty much the build. So anyway, thank you again, xtuffman, for this build. It is a very strong build, guys. If you haven't tried this one yet, I suggest that you do. It's pretty easy to build, although you do need a couple of exotics here, which is Vile and Scorpio. Although I think you could skip Scorpio and just use like a Blinder Firefly or something that inflicts status effects. But once you have Vile, all of the other pieces here, for example, Ongoing Directive 4 pieces, is very easy to get. The gear set main stat is weapon damage. No need to reroll that, just worry about putting status effects as the secondary attribute. And China Light is a bit hard to get, but you could settle for, you know, something with just status effects, and I think that would work pretty well. Also, you know, having Glass Cannon, you don't really have lots of survivability. I think that additional armor roll isn't really gonna make a lot of difference, so you could just skip that and just, you know, maybe roll that into weapon damage. But if you want to follow the build, you want to have one piece of armor core there in the China Light. Anyways, again, thank you so much, xtuffman, for the comment and build. This is a very fun Ongoing Directive build compared to my version, but I will make another version of this maybe in the future that focuses on like damage and bleed. But anyways, until next time, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.